Coming up on Market to Market. Republicans testing the waters for a run at the presidency travel to Iowa to offer their opinions on renewable fuels, immigration, and U.S. farm policy. Those stories and market analysis with Sue Martin next.
Funding for Market to Market is provided by Grinnell Mutual. You think differently about a customer when you stand in the middle of his dreams. We work to make sure you get covered right. Grinnell Mutual, a policy of working together. Information on finding an agent near you is available at grinnellmutual.com. This is the Friday, March 13 edition of Market to Market, the weekly journal of rural America.
Hello, I'm Mike Pearson. Spring doesn't officially arrive for one more week. But hibernating bears were awakened Friday when a sharp decline in oil prices fueled a sell-off on Wall Street. The Dow Jones Industrials fell 265 points before settling with a daily loss of 145. The Standard & Poor's 500 and the tech-heavy NASDAQ also moved sharply lower, capping the third consecutive losing week in the equity markets. The world's most heavily traded commodity led the way south as crude oil plunged to a 6-week low after the government reported domestic oil production continues to rise. And George Washington was in the weight room again this week, bulking up an exceptionally strong U.S. dollar, which rose above the century mark Friday. Lower oil prices present yet another challenge for renewable energy producers. And this week, potential presidential candidates of the Republican persuasion traveled to the nation's top ethanol-producing state to outline their rural priorities at the Iowa Ag Summit. Paul Yeager explains.
The day-long event was attended by agricultural leaders and media from all over the globe.
Please welcome to the stage your event host and moderator.
The Iowa Ag Summit was conceived and hosted by Bruce Rastetter, an agricultural entrepreneur who also serves as the president of the Iowa Board of Regents. And he believes the media are asking the wrong questions.
They really never got asked about these issues. And what surprised us when we thought about this is that no one had really asked them substantive ag questions. Everyone talks about the price of corn when they come to Iowa and ethanol, but not the whole host of issues that we know are really important, like nutrient runoff, conservation. How are we going to deal with those issues?
All attendees were asked the same questions. And for the most part, everyone was in agreement on the issues presented at the summit. But there were notable differences on the merits of the Renewable Fuel Standard, or RFS. The prospective candidates all agreed that ethanol has helped lessen the nation's dependence on foreign oil, but they are sharply divided on the government's role in the market and in regard to the RFS.
I support biofuels and ethanol. I think biofuels have a major role in the energy market and that they're going to continue to have a growing role. I also don't think, and you and I have talked about this a number of times before, I don't think Washington should be picking winners and losers. When it comes to energy, I think we should have an all of the above approach, but it should be driven by the market.
You've been a strong proponent of national security, energy independence. Where does ethanol fit in on that, and how do you view it?
Well, every gallon of ethanol you can produce here in Iowa is one less gallon to have to buy from people who hate your guts. So keep it up.
Former Senator Rick Santorum of Pennsylvania views a stable ethanol industry as a significant driver in the heartland.
One of the things that I felt was really important was to get out there and say how important it is to show how efficient ethanol has become, how important it is from the standpoint of an oxygen and to improving octane ratings, all of the things that ethanol can bring to the table. I just thought was an important thing, and it creates jobs in small town and rural America, which is where people are hurting.
Most attendees, however, believe ethanol is strong enough to stand on its own without federal mandates.
Ethanol is a good thing for America and for the world. It is clean, it is renewable, it is American-made. We should push it, but not by forcing people to buy it.
Do you support the extension of the wind tax credit?
I do if a state wants to do it. I don't at the federal level. I think all of these need to be looked at, whether it's oil and gas, whether it's the wind side, whether it's the RFS. I think all of them need to be put on the table, prove up whether or not these are, in fact, in the best interest of this country.
Wisconsin Governor Scott Walker took a different approach, calling on federal agencies to do their part to ensure a fairness in the marketplace.
I do believe, we've talked about this before, it's an access issue, and so it's something I'm willing to go forward on, continuing the renewable fuel standard and pressing the EPA to make sure that there's certainty in terms of the blend levels, or in terms of the level set. Thanks.
While ethanol and the RFS were center stage, other thorny issues were not off limits. Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina stressed the importance of cooperation when it comes to managing immigration issues.
Crooks are not welcome, gang members are not welcome, but we need a rational solution to the 11 million because no Democrat is going to give us everything we want without getting something. And you know what the Democratic Party is insisting upon? A better life for some of those who live in the shadow, but they will agree with me that crooks are not welcome to stay. But I promise you one thing, there will never be an immigration reform bill where you get everything you want and the other side doesn't get anything. That's called life.
All the potential candidates called for giving more control to local governments. In one question, former Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee was asked about how he would manage food programs in the 2014 Farm Bill.
Move the power of those programs back to the states. This is not something the federal government has any business doing, and they certainly have no expertise doing. To try to have a one-size-fits-all program for all 50 states, with states as diverse as Hawaii and Vermont, it makes no sense at all.
The governor of New Jersey reacted the same when asked how he would handle water quality issues.
We should let farmers, the local associations here, and the state government work together in all our different states to deal with those type of things. Farmers should be in charge of devising these solutions along with government here and their associations, not with some big top-down program from Washington, D.C. It never makes sense, and it certainly makes even less sense for folks who don't understand what's going on here in Iowa or in other of our farming states.
Christie was interrupted briefly by demonstrators who traveled from New Jersey to protest the governor's handling of the Hurricane Sandy recovery effort.
I'm glad to see that New Jersey has come to Iowa. How great is that? Great to have you here. And I think you understand I'll deal with you the same way here as I deal with you in New Jersey.
But the person garnering the most attention from the 250 credentialed media was former Florida Governor Jeb Bush. And on his first trip to Iowa as a potential presidential candidate, he echoed the sentiments of others when asked how he would handle environmental issues related to agriculture.
The only way to make this work effectively is not to come and, mandate and yell and scream and have press conferences and great photo ops. It's to work in a collaborative way to make sure that the viability of agriculture is front and center as you try to achieve a larger public good.
For Market to Market, I'm Paul Yeager.
Next, the Market to Market Report.
Grain prices were mixed this week as a surging U.S. dollar continues to be the big story in the markets. For the week, May wheat gained 20 cents, while the nearby corn contract moved 6 cents lower. Soybeans also were pressured as the May contract declined by 11 cents. Nearby meal prices followed suit with a modest downward move of 70 cents per ton. In the softs, cotton retreated this week as the May contract lost nearly $2.50 per hundredweight. Over in the dairy parlor, April Class 3 milk futures were off just under a nickel per hundredweight. Livestock prices were mixed as the April cattle contract gave up 38 cents. Nearby feeders advanced by $2.65, and the April lean hog contract lost more than $4. In the currency market, the U.S. dollar soared to a 12-year high Friday and is now up more than 10% in 2015 alone. Crude oil lost a whopping $4.41 per barrel. COMEX gold declined by about $12 per ounce, And the Goldman Sachs Commodity Index lost nearly 20 points to settle at 394.10. Here now to lend us her insight on these and other trends is one of our regular market analysts, Sue Martin. Sue, welcome back.
Thank you, Mike.
The dollar, as we've talked about a couple times so far in the show, is a tremendous story this week. And we've seen throughout the marketing year that wheat has really been hit by that rising dollar. Yet this week, dollar climbed and wheat prices climbed. Talk to us about what happened there.
Well, I think first off, the dollar was on another rampage and crossed the 100 mark today. And I think that that's part of that buying that's been under the dollar or supporting the dollar is kind of on the spread side of selling the euro, because the European Central Bank started their quantitative easing program on March 9th or this past Monday. So I think that's been part of that push. I think the dollar's going higher over time. I think we might get eventually up to around 109, 107 to 109. And then there might be some pretty stiff resistance there. But the 101 area, there's a little resistance. But the bottom line is, everybody talks about how the dollar is influencing our export sales or what have you. The concerns are that we won't be competitive. And yet you look at weekly export sales for wheat, and we're running about 3% ahead of a year ago, or the 5-year average, I should say. And then you look at soybean meal, and our export sales are 7% up. And you look at soybeans, and we're 5% up, and corn, I think, is 2.4%. And that's over the 5-year averages of all those. Well, our dollar was pretty low for about 2 or 3 years, like 2012, 13, right in through there. And yet, we're running better than that. So is it really having as big of an impact as we think? It might be having more of a bigger impact on meats instead of the grains. And the attitude might be we better buy it today because it just gets more expensive tomorrow.
Gotcha. Folks need feed grains.
That's right.
Now, we do have a question here from one of our viewers on Facebook. Louise in Healy, Kansas, curious about the wheat market. She's wondering, with winter kill evidence growing in the wheat crop in Kansas, is that help driving the price of wheat?
Well, there is some support, but it's very subtle, I think, at the moment. I think more supportive to wheat is the dryness that we're seeing throughout the western part of the Corn Belt and on into the southern plains. And I think then these warm temperatures that are talked about. In fact, there's more forecast of warmer temps as we go towards the end of the month even. So, it appears the Farmer's Almanac seems to be almost dead on here, that it predicted we would have a mild spring to start with. The moisture, it still tends to be that track along the Great Lakes into the northeast, and of course across the south, the Delta, that's El Nino. But I think that when we look at the wheat market, it is so cheap. And another thing, it was working itself into feed rations against corn.
All right. So closed over $5 this week, probably got some room to run, you think?
I think it should try a little more. I'm struggling to make cash sales on wheat. I know that the seasonality is from winter highs, you go down into, summer lows. But I'm a little reluctant to sell wheat at this time. I think that we need to wait it out a little bit.
All right. Well, let's jump down into the corn market. We saw another nickel decline here in old crop corn this week. Does it look like we're just struggling to find a bottom? What's happening in the old crop corn market?
Well, corn I think corn, first off, has been on the spread side, the short side of buying beans, selling corn, because of all the little issues that are percolating in South America. But I also think that when you look at corn, and the USDA Ag Outlook Forum predicted 89 million acres, that was more than many. I thought we'd be at 86. That's way more than what I think a lot of people are thinking and still thinking. But also then an increase in sorghum acres, which is a feed also. And so you have to I almost feel like you put those two together and it maybe is just weighing down a little bit on the market. Plus, the marketplace knows there's a boatload of corn in farmers' bins, and it keeps thinking that some of that grain's going to move between now and early summer. If it doesn't, and it waits till July, look out, because it's going to be nasty then. I think that the corn market is also looking at the fact that we're going into a nice, easier spring. And we're going to get farmers in the field. They're going to have a chance to get their inputs put in, the fertilizer on, what have you, and get caught up from last fall. And it seems like a spring that's totally different than the last two. And that, too, I think, is weighing a little bit on corn. But I don't see corn falling real hard from here for yet. We have that quarterly stocks report at the end of March, and we also have the plantings, prospective plantings. I think the trade will be a little apprehensive being too negative going into that. So you'll probably see some short covering. I think those are reasons that the corn is just kind of in a drift, so to speak.
And watch that end of the month maybe for some better selling opportunities.
Well, I think the end of the month might trigger a bounce, but ultimately, and I know this isn't really the normal pattern, but May seems real important this year. Ultimately, I would not be surprised if the weather's good that corn could drift into May.
Okay. All right. Well, then let's talk soybeans doing kind of the opposite of drifting, down 11 cents on the week after a big downward week last week. Is that going to continue, do you think?
Well, seasonally, beans do tend to have a high around the first few days of March, and then it sells off. That's not atypical of beans. And then the next thing we have to keep in mind is there's lots of little components fitting into beans right now. First off, you've got the grain strike in Argentina ending on Friday of this week, but there'll be more of those if they don't start getting the attention of the government, of the Cristina's regime, so to speak. They're in an election year. Elections are in October. And the contenders, the leading contenders, are very pro lowering taxation. And when you look at taxes on beans at 35%, the Argentine farmer is still said to be holding 7 to 8 million metric tons. They normally don't carry much over a crop year, but they did because of the fact that they're looking at beans as being kind of a hedge against inflation. And then the other thing is you've got in Brazil, of course, the trucker strike is kind of percolating a little bit. They've got another meeting with the government come, I think, March 26th, and to hopefully get maybe freight rates changed a little bit and also fuel costs lowered. And I don't know how successful they're going to be in all of that, but that's in the background. And then, this seems just like it seems like everything's percolating down there. This just seems like another year where it's like, hey, the stevedores just might strike when you get closer into April.
Okay. So we might see a bit of a bounce on a stevedore strike, something to restrict beans again coming out of South America.
It's just keeping the flow. It's not moving easily. But we have Argentina, by the way, with 20% of their production area in very wet ground, some flooding. So their harvest starts in, and all of a sudden it overlaps because Brazil is so late. And you've got all of that coming at us at once. But on the same token, Argentina is the world's largest exporter of soy meal. That's what percolated us last year. We still have that potential.
All right. Well, let's talk the cotton market. We saw a big move downward in cotton, almost 250. What happened?
Well, I think cotton's an oil seed for one thing. And I think all these markets are very limited for right now as to how strong they can be. And cotton had a nice little holding pattern, and then kind of just all of a sudden started to cave over. The dollar, I think, might be affecting that too. But being an oil seed, Malaysian palm oil has given up and fallen. I'm concerned that it's starting to lose favor. Slowing economy in China means maybe they don't buy as much cotton. And, of course, they had built up huge reserves and sold a bunch of it out last year. So I don't think the climate is still healthy yet for cotton.
Okay. All right. So might take some time to rebuild levels or rebuild prices, I should say, back to where they were 6-8 months ago. Well, now jumping down to the livestock markets, we saw just a little move on the live cattle side, 38 cents to the downward side. Again, it still looks like we might have found a little bit of stability. Third week, we're relatively flat.
Well, the cattle market, feeders especially, had been sideways through all of February. And the market had two huge slides, from about the 3rd, 5th of December. It had two big legs down. And so it was almost like it was just moving a little too fast. And seasonally, you do lift into about the middle part of March. And we've gotten that. And, of course, feeders are coming off of pastures now, wheat pastures. The weather is ideal. The pastures are grass is greening up. And so all of a sudden, there's kind of an interest in feeder cattle, and that helped the cause. In the meantime, though, slaughter this week was up, I think slaughter was down 9% from a year ago at this time. Conversely, pork slaughter was up 10% from a year ago at this time. Meat does not seem to be moving out on the West Coast as well as we'd like it to be. And yet, on the flip side, I don't hear anybody talking about the early potential of grilling this year. And the East Coast has a boatload of people that are going to have so bad a cabin fever, they're going to want out and to be able to get out and do something. So somewhere in here, I think there is a catch for demand for meat, but right now they say it is slowing. And you've got the choice now, discount to the select. And so, you know, the problem with our meat is the retailer has been very reluctant to lower not only beef prices, but pork prices as well. And then you pop off with the avian bird flu. Just not what we really needed at this time.
Well, and that was my question, heading to talk about the pork market with you a little bit, Sue. We heard that avian bird flu now, I believe it's broken in 3 different states.
That's right.
And yet we saw hogs sell off aggressively. It would seem like a bird flu might have a lifting effect on hogs as we're potentially losing some of that more cost-competitive poultry. You think folks would shift to pork, but that didn't happen in the market. Talk about how that is interpreted by the trade.
Well, I think what it is because we have 30 countries now that have banned imports of pork, or not pork, but poultry from the U.S., some of them have, like Mexico, for example, has banned it coming from out of Arkansas. We're blessed if that's the only way they ban it, and it is so far only in turkeys. But unfortunately, these countries, poultry's poultry to them, and poultry products. I think we have to keep in mind, yes, those flocks are eradicated so you get less numbers, but we still have a fair amount of product in the coolers, and unfortunately, less exports means more product backing up, and then you've got all this pork, and the retailer not dropping his price is allowing for pork product. It was down today too, quite hard. So all of a sudden, it's like poultry seems to, I think, compete more against pork than it does beef. Beef kind of stands, I think, on its own. So the bottom line is, I think that that's what's weighing. And then, you know, pork slaughter, hog slaughter was up 10%, I think, this week from a year ago's levels, and up 3% for the year. But we were targeted like 6 or 7% that we should be up this week. So we're even still doing more of that. The good news is weights are coming down on hogs. We're nearly equal to about a year ago now. So that's the good news there. But my goodness, it makes you wonder just how much lower can this market go? It's had a demise that's been huge. You don't have disease. PED virus is pretty well straightened out. Maybe some PRRS, but for the most part, this industry, and another big thing is Europe, because of the dollar. Here's another market that is being affected by the dollar because the euro falling so hard and Europe backing the U.S. in sanctions against Russia, it allowed for Europe to step up to the plate, and they started pushing pork at our expense into Asian countries. Okay. Now, there was rumors today that Russia is going to come out with some kind of big news announcement over the weekend, and I think that helped the markets break today, too.
Okay. Now, we've seen pork selling off. On the other side, feeders are climbing. Just want, before we go, does that market look like it has some more legs underneath it, do you think?
Well, I'm on the fence with feeder cattle. I think we've got maybe a week and a half, 2-week break possible here in prices. That would not surprise me. But I've noticed that it is not uncommon for cattle to lift in the week of Easter. So I could see where we could break down for about a week and a half and then catch and then try to work our way back up into Easter, maybe the 8th of April, something like that. And then we need to watch and see, do we turn seasonal and start to roll over? Because meat production is going to be good, and we're going to have good cattle numbers coming here as we get into summer, and even better than a year ago.
Well, thank you so much, Sue. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
That wraps up this edition of Market to Market. But Sue and I will continue our discussion and answer some of your questions in our Market Plus segment online. You'll also find audio podcasts and streaming video of our program exclusively at the Market to Market website. Now be sure to join us next week when we'll examine new federal commodity programs just before the extended sign-up deadline. So until next time, thanks for watching. I'm Mike Pearson. Have a great week.
Market to Market is a production of Iowa Public Television, which is solely responsible for its content. Funding for Market to Market is provided by Grinnell Mutual. You think differently about a customer when you stand in the middle of his dreams. We work to make sure you get covered right. Grinnell Mutual, a policy of working together. Information on finding an agent near you is available at grinnellmutual.com.